Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, really anyone who is caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that we're on today. While we meet on a virtual platform with folks joining us from across the province, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land we each call home. Today, I'm joining you from the city of St. Catharines in the Niagara region, which is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering places home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. If you'd like to learn more about the lands that you're joining from, you can find more information at native-land.ca. Our webinar today is a bit different. It's a question and answer period, and it's all about reducing holiday caregiver stress with Dr. Patrick McGrath. So the holiday season can be a source of stress and feelings of overwhelm for many caregivers. In today's webinar, we welcome back Dr. Patrick McGrath, who is a clinical psychologist and emeritus professor of psychiatry at Dalhousie University and a scientist at the IWK Health Center, where his research is based. He's an adjunct professor of psychiatry at the University of Ottawa, and he frequently treats caregivers with anxiety in his private practice. So today, Dr. McGrath is going to provide some insights on what makes the holiday season so stressful and offer some suggestions to support well-being over the holidays. And as I said, we'll also spend much of our time today talking through your questions. So thank you to those who submitted questions in advance. We will get to those today as well. And if things crop up for folks as we move along, please put those questions in the chat box or share any comments or thoughts with us, and we will get to as many of those at the end of a brief presentation. So I want to welcome Patrick, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here again with the OCO and talking about holiday stress. Holiday stress is something that I think catches us a little bit unaware because we always expect that the holidays are going to be good for us. It's going to be fun. But some of the reasons why holiday stress occurs is that we may have excessive expectations. We may expect it to be so good. And then if it doesn't turn out the way we want it to, we feel a lot of stress because of that, a disappointment. And also emotions are often stirred up by the holidays, memories of things that happened around Christmas, or things that we shared, maybe some positive things that we're no longer able to share. And, you know, this combination of expectations are made a lot worse, of course, by the commercial. And you can't go anywhere these days without holiday music being played. For some, it has real cultural expectations. And then there's the excessive expectations and emotions of other people. You know, the people that we care for, the rest of the family may expect that it be the same as it was, 30 or 40 years ago, and that we put on a big spread and have a huge family dinner. Well, that may not fit with our capabilities or needs or desires. And so those types of things often do that. And again, the last thing is that it gets darker. When I wake up now, it's dark. And when I go to sleep now, when I finish work, even though I work from home, when I finish work, it's dark. And so by the time I get out, I either get out in the dark or I don't get out at all. So the darkness has a direct effect on our mood and our situation. The other thing that I didn't mention on the slide is just the fact that it's snowing and icing, and that may prevent us from doing some of the things that we want to do. And of course, if we can participate in any sort of winter sport, that makes it even better. makes it less stressful, but it's oftentimes our fear of falling or the slipperiness or just the cold makes it difficult to get out. So holiday times can be wonderful, for some people, and indeed for all of us may at times be wonderful, but it's difficult for some other people, and it's also difficult for many of us, even if we generally enjoy the holidays. And there's some specific issues, and there's more visiting and socializing, and we're expected to visit and socialize, whether we want to or not. And some of that expectation is a good thing because it gets us out and doing things. It's extra food. Some of us have to watch our weight, and certainly I am on a seafood diet. Whenever I see food, I eat it. So it's difficult for me to go to a place where there's all sorts of opportunities to eat, and then drinking alcohol, or and that sometimes creates problems for ourselves or problems in a family. There may be Uncle George who he gets drunk at family gatherings, and it's a real stress to try and figure out what are we going to do with George. And cards, gifts, and sometimes travel, expectations of travel, all good, but can be very difficult. There is a lot of pressure to make it feel like the best time of the year, and sometimes that's helpful, but oftentimes it's really difficult. And we may have to adapt our caregiving routines and change what we're doing. And again, that can provide stress. The emotions collide sometimes with reality, and the holidays are supposed to be wonderful, but sometimes they're not, and that is difficult for each of us to deal with. You may feel overburdened, stressed, or burned out. I mean, most caregivers have enough to do all of the time, and then the extra demands of the holidays are sometimes too much. And as I mentioned, the alcohol or other substance may reduce inhibitions and reduce self-control, and that may cause some difficulty. So I like holidays. I like Christmas, but I must admit that there's always some double-edged swords in Christmas time and in holiday time. So we have to figure out how to get around them, how to deal with them. The holiday memories often trigger, previous memories of holidays, but also just memories of people that have gone. We may have deaths that have occurred in the holidays, and that again brings up all sorts of feelings. I just went to the funeral of a dear friend on Monday, and I must admit the memories of previous holidays and people who have gone have left, kept on passing over me as that, and it was bittersweet. There may be some negative feelings. You may have some guilt. You may have some issues with difficulties and that. And we have the winter depression, which is a well-documented phenomena with the reduced light here in the northern hemisphere, where we have these short days. I guess the switch over when days begin to get longer is about the 21st of December. It does have a direct impact on in the physiological production of our serotonin, melatonin in the brain. These regulate sleep and mood. And so what we are is, it's natural, even if we don't have seasonal affective disorder, it's natural to have a little bit of a low time during the winter season. So we may feel sad, hopeless, or we may have more physical signs as well. And persistent low mood over the holidays can occur even without seasonal affective disorder. So, there's lots of general advice. You have to prioritize your well-being during the holidays. Now, I recognize, having done a fair amount of caregiving, that's not easy, and we don't have a lot of time because most of our time is spent providing care. But we also have to realize that we can't really take care of anybody else if we don't take care of ourselves at least a bit, and planning ahead, setting the priorities. Maybe it's this year, it's not the priority to have the all of the Christmas baking done. Maybe we have to shift the priorities. We have to keep it simple and ask for help. Asking for help is one of the hardest things that we can do, and it's really funny. We usually enjoy when somebody asks us for help, as long as it's not beyond our capabilities or just too much given our circumstances. But it's a pleasant thing to be asked for help. But we all tend to feel that it's not a good thing for us to ask for help. But asking for help is one of the ways we build relationships, and providing the opportunity for other people to give us a bit of help is helpful for them as well as for us. And setting boundaries, and this can be, boundaries with friends, with people that we're caring for, and also with family, which is often the hardest boundaries to set. So, this year, maybe you're not going to invite just everybody, but only the immediate family over for dinner. So instead of 40 people for dinner, you're only going to have 4 or 5 or 6. And again, it's really important, especially at this time of year, to really focus on getting enough sleep and to eating well. If you can get any exercise, getting some exercise, getting out, because even when it's dark during the day or it's overcast, like it is right now here in Ottawa, where it's snowing, you get an awful lot of light if you get out in the sun. Or what I do every morning is, once the sun comes up, I stand in an eastern window or southern window and just gaze out, because that provides a lot of light to get my natural tendency to feel low during the morning out of the way. So there are some general things that you can do, but I'd really like for you to have some questions, some comments, some examples of things that you've done to help you with Christmas blues, because it's pretty common. It's not. It's something that many people feel. Katie.
Thanks, Patrick. If you want, you can go ahead and stop sharing those slides and we can have a little chat. I think you've laid out some of the fundamentals and things to think about and consider really nicely for folks. And as Patrick mentioned, please feel free to put any questions or comments in the chat. One of the great opportunities that these webinars offer are ways for folks to share their own strategies with each other as well. So if there are caregivers in our audience that have found some things that work really nicely for you as you navigate through some challenging emotional times through the holidays, feel free to put that in the chat and share it with others. You might inspire some thoughts and ideas for other folks. We did have a few questions come in advance of our talk today from our audience. So I want to get to those and then any other questions or comments that come up as we move through. There's often a theme, Patrick, around different types of grief in the holiday season. Some of us have lost people, and we're now approaching a holiday season that can often be family centric or focused on connecting, and we re-experience some of that grief. Or some of us might be, caring for someone who is not well and not expected to recover, and this might be their last holiday. And I'm wondering if you have any insights or thoughts around how folks can navigate through that grief experience, and maybe talk a little bit about different types of grief that caregivers might experience through the holiday season.
Right. So grief does often come up during the holidays, because it's a trigger for us to go back and remember things. And it triggers memories of past holidays that were perhaps much better than the holiday we're having now, or also triggers just memories of people. And so the key is to try and figure out that a certain amount of grief and a certain amount of focusing on the past is a good thing. Okay, we process things by focusing on the past, but we also have to move back and forth between the past and the present. So the past relationships, when my wife who died, Christmas was always one of her favorite times. So I will think about that. But at the same time, I think about, well, what am I doing now for this Christmas? And what are we able to share? Well, how can I share things with my daughter this Christmas? And so back and forth, it's sort of like not getting stuck in the past, but at the same time, acknowledging that these memories are really important and these feelings are really important. So, not pretending that they don't exist, but moving back and forth. So, venturing into things that you can do now that will make you feel good, but at the same time, not pretending that those past memories aren't there because they are there. And it's important to acknowledge them and to be able to deal with them. So, dealing with them, if they're a bit overwhelming, is hard. And I think that model of back and forth, sharing with the past and sharing with the future. And we may think that our future isn't, it doesn't have anything for us, and that's what happens when we get depressed. We figure that our future is just not not worthwhile. And so, but that's where we have to really focus on trying to say, okay, what's the story that I'm telling myself about the future? What is it that I do have that I'm grateful for? What is it that I do have? Yeah, I can't, I'm not off on a ski trip with my, that person that I used to ski with every Christmas. We used to go to the Tremblant and ski for 3 days after Christmas. I'm not going to be able to do that. I just can't do it. I have too many duties and my physical capabilities aren't there. Yeah, that's okay. But I still have the memories and I really enjoyed that. That was good to do that. And it's not, this Christmas I'm going to be able to do some things that are really nice. I'm going to have this person over for dinner, and or I'm going to we're going to have we're not going to have a big family dinner, but we're going to have I'm still going to go out and get those Christmas crackers, those crazy things that you pull and they make all that the bang. We're still going to do that, even though it's a little bit of extra effort. I'm going to find where they are and I'm going to do that. So you use your past memories to help figure out what to do now. And it is important to pick up on little things that we feel that may give us a little bit of joy. And that's what we have to do. You have to take it a little bit at a time, little chunks of joy here and there, and little things that we can feel some sort of gratitude for, and build again, in spite of our memories that may be very, very strong and very difficult, going back, acknowledging them, but moving on to the future. I don't know if that's easy to say and hard to do, but that's the model that I use, and that's the model that I think is best supported by the research literature. Is it the acknowledgement at the same time of past regrets, grief, and then moving forward, doing some things that are for now, for today, for the future.
Hmm. And I like the idea of trying to incorporate, so if perhaps you've lost someone that's not with you over the holiday season, but trying to incorporate some of those memories, moments, even if they're tangible things. It could be, you know, my grandmother used to make this cranberry salad, and she had dementia, she's passed away now. And that's something that we carry through every holiday. So it might be something as small as that, where you're still honoring the memory of somebody, celebrating the life that they did have and the relationships that they did have with you, but you're not fixated and living in sort of the grief side of it. It's more of that celebration perspective.
Yeah, and that's a wonderful example, Katie. And food is a wonderful way to do that. It's food is so, because it's our sustenance and we're all going to have to eat. We might as well incorporate some of the things that give us positive memories. Now, we may not have a 40-pound turkey like we used to have, but maybe you get a slice of a couple of and as a couple of slices of turkey from the supermarket where they now you can get just a little bit and prepare that. And you incorporate some of the old and some of the new. Acknowledge the grief. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to feel
Mhm.
badly about people you've lost. And it's okay to feel badly about sometimes it's not just people that we've lost, but it's our abilities or our people that we're caring for, their abilities. So when your grandmother is used to be the one that did everybody's dinner for everybody. Well, maybe now she's not able to do that. Maybe she's in has dementia and she can't do it, and you're caring for her. But you take out one of those recipes and you figure it out, and you'll see the smile on her face, I would expect, and you'll see this smile on your face, the inner smile that allows you to take something from the past and bring it into the future.
Yeah, yeah, and I like the comment from one of our guests here about finding and acknowledging the loss, but trying to remember the good things. So that around the holiday season, it might be a food item, maybe it's a song, maybe it's an activity if your family are game players, or you do an annual photo, or the Christmas crackers, like you mentioned. There may be some sort of holiday tradition or sentiment that helps you keep that person's memory alive, but you're not staying in sort of the grief side of things. You're honoring them from a positive side of things.
Right. And sometimes acknowledging how sad you are about the fact that they're
Yeah.
gone. And the thing that I like about what you're saying is that you choose, it may be difficult to find them at first, but you start
Mhm.
searching for them. And you start searching for them. If you're grieving about your spouse who is gone, you search in your memory for, okay, what is it that made her Christmas or his Christmas really important, and what can I take from that and apply it to this Christmas, or this Hanukkah, or whatever you can take from that. If you're depressed or if you're feeling very sad, it'll be hard to find those because the black dog of depression is dominating the situation. But if you really go back and say, okay, I'm going to find some things that will make me, there may be some bittersweet aspects of the joy that you have, but that's okay. But how you bring that and bring it from the grief.
Yeah, and sometimes just having those conversations with family, friends, remembering that person that you lost, they might have some great ideas. The remember whens,
Yeah.
remember when Nana used to do this, or remember when. So that might spark some ideas for future celebration, holiday, even just, keeping that tribute to that person going, regardless of the time of year and the season. And again, it's easier said than done. These are suggestions that we're making to folks, and we're coming at this from a bit of a different perspective. You did talk a bit, Patrick, about, kind of being mindful of getting trapped in sort of the grief side of things and focusing and fixating on the, as you put, a dark side, or the harder moments. I don't know if you have any strategies or tools that you've used in your practice, or read through the literature that folks can utilize to catch themselves when they're in those moments and move outside of that mindset.
Yeah, I think I think it takes more than anything determination that you're going to try it. And you start with small steps. If you're caught in the grief and you can't seem to get out, just promise yourself and then set a time to practice something a little bit different. So if you're what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to make a small dish that reminds me of the grief, but reminds me of the joy. I'm going to take out one of the remarks. I'm going to take out some of the pictures that we have. I have from when he or she was with us, and really focus on those, and remember not only when you start saying to yourself, oh yeah, we're not going to be able to do that this year. okay, no, I'm going to also remember how wonderful it was to do things with this. It was such a wonderful time. And how can I bring that? How can I move that? What can I do now? Oh, well, I am doing it. Yeah, I'm looking at the photographs and I'm enjoying myself. I'm immersing myself in that experience. And yes, it's gone. Yes, it won't come back. But what can I do to keep the memory alive, to keep doing things that are important to me now, as well as were important in the past? So
Mhm.
I do think it takes a lot of effort and a lot of creativity, but start small. Don't think that you're going to be
Mhm.
able to do everything. Just try a little thing and see what works. So a little bit of experimentation of trying different things. What can make me feel a little bit better, a little bit so that I'm turning my grief into something that's forward looking as well as just looking backwards.
Yeah. And it's like I say, it's easier said than done. I think sometimes it's just being aware in that moment that I feel this way. It's okay to feel this way, but we're going to try our best not to get stuck here. And we're going to try to find those ways to shift our thinking. And sometimes that takes a bit of self-compassion and self-reflection, and that's okay. And it will be hard. It's going to be hard for some,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's all right.
And it's often complicated by regrets or guilt. And I think in those situations in particular, you just have to forgive yourself. Okay, maybe I didn't do everything. Maybe I made a mistake in the way. I was so grumpy at the end when she died. I was just, but let's give myself a little bit of a break. I was exhausted because it was up most nights. I was really doing the best that I could at that time. That's not to say that I couldn't do better and I could probably figure out things if, now I know things that I didn't know then. But, so that story that you tell yourself in your brain, is so important to try and bring that story to the forefront and say, okay, is that story actually fair? Is it accurate? Is it helpful? Or how can I begin to change that story? Not to everything was fine, so you don't have to do it. So it's not a black and white thing. It's just a gradual change of the story. Yeah, I failed with that, but I did do the best that I could at that time, and maybe I could have tried harder, but I just couldn't seem to do it. You know, I was so exhausted, so tired, and give yourself a little bit of compassion. But I
Yeah.
did care for her. I did take care of her. I She was happy when I did things for her. I did a good job. Not perfect, but I did a good job.
Yeah. Yeah. A little self-compassion can go a long way. We've got some really lovely shares in the chat. So thank you to those who are being vulnerable and passing along some thoughts and insights and strategies that are working or have worked for you, or things that you're hoping to try. It's not always easy. And as you said, Patrick, it's also not black and white. Grief, loss, caregiving, it's a very messy ball of yarn in a lot of ways, where it's not a linear this, then this, then this. Things change, our feelings change, our perspectives change. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on, and maybe they're the same, it's a similar approach for those that are approaching, caregiving right now with somebody approaching the holiday season whose health is declining, and they're reflecting that this might be my last holiday season with this person. Do you have any thoughts or strategies around embracing that and ways to cope and support
Yes.
through that side of the grief?
Yes, I think that's really important, Katie, because we're faced with somebody who was once very vibrant and very much part of our lives, and then we see that they're severely declining, and this is going to be the last season that they're going to be with us. And the thing that you have to figure out is how can you combine that regret that this is going to be the last one, but also with a joy from all of the times that you spent together and the time that you're spending together this season. And how can I make that as good as it can be? It won't be the same. It won't be as great, but I'm going to make that the best time I can. I learned a good lesson of that this year. Actually, I mentioned that I was at a funeral earlier this week, and a very good friend, a brilliant academic, he had throat cancer and was dying, and he knew he was dying, and he was fine with that. He would have preferred not to, but he had a good sense of humor, and in the end, he couldn't talk. So all we did, and he didn't really. I couldn't go and visit him because he just wasn't up to it. But we would text back and forth. And so I treasure the last text that he sent me. It was only a day before he died. And he said, "This is the end, Pat." He said, "My family's around. I appreciate our friendship." And so he was such a wonderful, model for me to look at the positive things. Even though he was very debilitated, couldn't speak, couldn't manage his own himself, was bedridden, he was still able to communicate and to share some joy. Now, some people, when they're dying, are like that, and some people, when they're dying, are very unhappy and very difficult, and that makes it more difficult. But it's also the time to step back and say, okay, so what are the positive things I can take from this friendship, from this relationship that I've had for so long, and what joy can I take from that? And so it is hard, but it's something that most of us are able to do. And at times we do get overwhelmed by grief. That's the time when you do the other things too. You get out in the light. You make sure that you surround yourself as much as you can with positive people, and you forgive yourself for all of your failings, because we've all failed. We've all done things wrong.
Part of being a human being. No
Yes.
one's perfect. No one's perfect. And I think what I often think about is, if I look back on this moment, am I going to think about my time with that person on their last holiday with me as being a joyful, positive one, or is it going to be mired in sort of sadness, grief? And sometimes there aren't options. Sometimes people's health is really bad, but we want to try to make the best of it for them, but also for us. We can't lose ourselves as caregivers in this mix, as we often do. We forego our feelings and thoughts and um, experiences to take care of others. And so I think it's also important to continue to prioritize ourselves as we're going through that holiday season. Which kind of takes me to another question that we hear often, and you touched on a bit in your slides, is the general feeling of overwhelm during the holidays. We are bombarded by all of this media and these expectations and the perfect dinners and the perfect gatherings and the perfect gifts and while we're trying to navigate our own lives. And as caregivers, we know that's not easy. So we had a question from somebody about, how do I ask for help when I'm feeling overwhelmed and it feels like it's just another thing on my never ending to-do list?
Yeah, that's a very difficult thing to do. I think that the way to do it is to ask for help in small
Mhm.
pieces, small changes, small requests, and to people that you know will likely enjoy being helpful. So try and choose something. You don't ask the grumpiest person unless you know that underneath that grumpiness, there's really a heart of gold. But we have to remind ourselves that asking for help is a gift to somebody. It's a gift that you're giving them. And yes, it may be a little bit difficult, but it's a gift that will help you, but it's a gift that really helps them. And it's a matter of trying to find what would be the least difficult thing for me to do and do it.
Mhm.
And you have to sort of like think of this as a priority, because it gives both ways. That's the advantage of asking for something from somebody. Now, you can't ask too much. but ask something that's appropriate and small, and 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 remember that you're doing them a favor. It's not a burden on people. If somebody asks me for something, most of the time I comply. Sometimes I say no. There's certain boundaries in my life that I say, well, I can't do that. I'm sorry. And had that situation comes up all the time, and you just have to say it in a pleasant way. It's not a terrible thing for somebody else to ask. But the thing is the same with you. This is that if you ask for small things, could you do this for me? I'd really appreciate it if you could, and then be flexible about it. So there's always some flexibility in our feelings. There's always something that we can move in our to-do list, and there's always something we can ignore on our to-do list. And this is one thing I would suggest. Don't ignore this. Don't ignore asking for help, but move it up a little bit on your priority list. And don't ask for, you don't have to ask for anything huge. Just ask for something that will be meaningful to you and that will be helpful and that somebody else could do quite easily. It could be for everybody, it's different. It could be, can you bring over something when you come? They would be delighted. Usually you never ask for anything to bring over. In fact, they've learned over the years that Patrick doesn't like anybody to bring anything over. But this year, Patrick is asking if you could you bring over a little bit of dessert? It doesn't have to be anything fancy. With the 4 or 5 people gathering for Christmas, or could you help me figure out how I can get a snow clearing, person to do my snow clearing today, because the kid that used to do it is no longer, and it looks like it's going to be quite a bit of snow today. So can you find me somebody to help me on that? I can't seem to figure out where I can phone or who I can ask. Could you help me with that? That's small sorts of things that most people would say, yeah, sure, I can try that. So little things are important. And then because you see, the thing is that builds the relationship you have with that person. It's not only something that you can that is helpful for you, that they will like and you will like, but that builds the relationship. We feel closer to people that we've asked for things from, and we feel closer to people that we've done things for. And that's the way we have to function, is try it just a little bit, just moving the needle just a bit more in getting help.
And this is a question we get quite often. I was just speaking with someone yesterday about this, and we do have some tools and resources at OCO that we can include as part of our follow-up. We have a caregiver checklist as a fillable form that folks can use to customize all the different activities and the work that you do as a caregiver, and then think about all those people, some of those people that maybe came to you. It may have been a week ago, it may have been 6 years ago, and said, Katie, how can I help? And you go, yeah, I'll let you know. And then you don't follow up, or you don't hear from them again, because, to your example, Patrick, about bringing things for meals, year after year, you just learn, well, Patrick doesn't want us to bring anything, so I'm going to stop asking. So if you can use tools like our caregiver checklist, we have other resources through our toolkits that can help you think about delegating or asking for help for some of those things that maybe the neighbor or your family or friends or somebody in the community can support, that takes a little bit of the work off of your shoulders as a caregiver. And in my conversation with a caregiver just yesterday about this, she said, I've never had anyone say no. And then she qualified it and said, actually, no, there was one gentleman and he said no, but not now. Ask me again later, because he had things going on in his life. And she did, and he's helping her as well. So it's really validating to hear that from somebody who's living this life as a caregiver in a really high stress situation, where she's done that work and asked those people, can you help me with the garden? Can you help me walk my dog? Can you bring me a meal? Can you pick this up at the grocery store? And everyone has said, yeah, Sure, happy to do it. So it does feel scary. It does feel like you're going to ruin a friendship, and we don't want to do that. But like you say, Patrick, most people want to help. They
And
just
it's
don't
a
want to impose themselves in your private and personal life.
That's right. And it's a gift to them. The other
Yeah.
thing that you have to consider is, does it have to be done?
Yeah.
Is it necessary? You know, is it necessary that I clean the house? You know, my house is pretty clean. You know, the dust isn't that heavy. People can get through to the yeah, people are coming over, but and I'd usually want my house to be perfect, but people won't they're not coming over to see a perfectly dusted house. They're coming over to visit. They're coming over to share some time with me. So does it have to be done is an important question. And does it have to be done the way I used to do it? And things as simple as cleaning house or preparing, I used to prepare a three-course meal with hors d'oeuvres and with all the fixings. Well, does that have to be done?
Yeah.
Or can I do something a little bit different that's still important?
Yes.
And nice suggestion from Francine is trying to get the person who you're caring for involved. They may
hmm
say no, or it's just in some ways it's like we did when we had kids. You know, it might be more trouble to have uh, my daughter help me with the pancakes, but it was always the best thing to do if I could, is have her
hmm
help me mix a pancake mix. And so that's the type of thing that is can be very helpful. You have to judge. You have to judge with your own situation and the situation of the person that you're caring for. So your own situation may be is that you know yourself well enough that you won't have the patience to deal with it. That's okay. Then you don't do it. We make choices all the time. And on the other hand, it may be that they just can't do anything. Maybe they can't do that. But maybe their wheelchair or it can be wheeled over to the kitchen area and they can observe you doing it. Or even some things, maybe if they're bedridden, maybe you can do some things on the preparation. You can still mix the cookies if you're making cookies, in the bedroom with them and do some of that just to share time with them or making something. So, you know, and just try and figure out, well, what will bring me joy and will bring them joy. If you find it that it's going to be too much for you, it's okay to not do it.
Yeah.
But if you find that it would bring you a little bit of joy to see uh your mom, as somebody was saying, that she used to wheel her into the kitchen to watch preparations, then that's a good thing to do. But just don't worry about it. If you don't want to do it, that's okay too. You have to choose what will add to the deposit of joy for the season, and not something that you feel that you should do.
hmm
The shoulds are terrible in that way. When we feel
Yes.
that we should do this or should do that, that's often the time to reflect and say, well, what's that? What's that? What's that I'm saying to myself, that I should do it? No, maybe I want to do it, or it would be nice if I did it, but no, no, I shouldn't do it. I don't have to invite Uncle Ernie over. You know, it would be nice. Yeah, he's alone. And if I think I can manage it, I will. But it's not a matter of that I should do it. It's a matter of that either I want to do it, or maybe I don't want to do it at all because Uncle Ernie is a mean, fellow when he comes over and he's been drinking, and I don't want to have him over, so I won't, and that's okay.
That's a great prompt for people as they think about the language they use with themselves, the should haves, the shoulds. I need to do this. Well, do you need to do it or do you want to do it? Is it a need, a want? And then if we can find our way to sort of stopping our thinking, self-reflecting a little bit, it might empower us to be able to parcel out the shoulds, the things that do need to get done. Yes, I need milk, bread, food in the kitchen. We all need to eat. Do I need to decorate the house the way I did 10 years ago? No. I don't need to. I want to. And if I have time, I can do that. But if not,
Or if
that's
I
okay
can get
too.
some, or if I can get somebody to help me with it.
Exactly. Who wants to climb on a ladder and put lights up on their house?
Well,
Get your neighbor to do it for
yeah,
you.
no, 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 not if he's over 50.
Your young neighbor,
Yes.
who's
Well,
already on their ladder.
the
Uh,
thing to do is, just to riff off of that, we have lots of Christmas lights, and I'm old enough that I don't want to get on a ladder, and my wife isn't really good on ladders. So what she's done, and she is in charge of this, is she has made all the Christmas lights go on the bushes up and down, and it just looks very different from what anybody else does, but it looks great. And so many people have stopped and said, "Oh, your lights, you don't put them just in straight lines on the eaves." "Oh, no, no, they're yeah." And they said, so, and it really looks great. So you can always do something a little bit differently to meet your own needs.
yeah, create new decorations, new traditions, new things to support you in your caregiving role. I love that. We do have a few minutes left, and one more question that I wanted to get to that was submitted in before the webinar today. This one might be a little more tricky because it's related to folks who might be experiencing cognitive decline, confusion, disorientation, maybe something similar to a dementia type of diagnosis. And the question was really around how to navigate and support people who are experiencing those challenges when they're asking to do certain things, like their memory is now taking them to their childhood home. And
Mhm.
so they're saying, no, we need to go there for the holiday, or we need to, this is what we would normally do. And so there's this insistence and fixation from the care recipient on things they remember from the past. So I think the question is really, are there any strategies or communication tactics or things that folks could consider if they're supporting someone who might be having some cognitive difficulties through the season?
Right. Well, I think first of all, I think you try and adopt a situation where you have a combination of firmness. Okay, you're not going to be able to go, to Berlin this year, even Berlin, Ontario. So you're going to have. So there has to be some firmness in the with warmth,
Mhm.
and that combination is what you want. So it could be a dive. You could just like frequently people with dementia will be asking more and more questions that they've asked 5 minutes ago. So that may be, the same way that you deal with that with a warmth. Uh, yes, dear, I understand that. Why don't we, and maybe some diversion, why don't we get out the pictures from, the last time, or when we have some pictures of you when you were a kid in this location, and let's look at those. And but right now we're not in Berlin, we're in Ottawa, and we're going to be staying here for the holidays because that's what we have to do. But let's look at some pictures from Berlin. Let's go over those pictures, and maybe we could play some music that you remember from then. But we're going to be staying here in Ottawa, and because that's what we have to do, and we'll just enjoy some of the memories from Berlin. That may not solve it, okay? But we want to be warm and caring. There's no use in being angry about that because it's the disease process that's happening, and you can't really be angry at the fact that the disease process is you can't be angry at a person because they have a disease. And but warmth and firmness. So it's not a good idea to pretend that you're going to do it or to say, "Oh yes, we're going to do it," because then that's the one thing they'll remember. Remember, they said, "Oh, but you said that we could," So firmness and warmth. That's always the combination that I look for. And so it could be a diversion, it could be partial, like looking at the pictures, watching an old movie, doing something. Well, we can't go to we can't make it to Berlin, but we will have German cookies, the strudel that you used to love. I'll make that, but we're staying here in Ottawa.
And it is
So
quite complicated for people. It's really an individualized approach.
absolutely,
Everyone's scenario is a bit different. And we often at OCO, if you're supporting somebody with dementia, for example, really encourage you to get connected with your local Alzheimer's Society. They have some phenomenal resources for your care recipient, but also for you as a caregiver to help you navigate some of those more complicated conversations as your person's dementia progresses.
yes, I think that's a very good suggestion.
Hmm. And similarly, if it's say another diagnosis or need, there's often organizations who specialize in that around the province. And if you're not sure, folks, you can always reach out through our helpline. It's available 24/7 for anyone across the province of Ontario who might be looking for information and resources to support you as a caregiver and the person that you're caring for. So if you're in that situation, I see my colleagues pop that into the chat box. You can call that number any time of day and you'll get a real live human, no hour-long waits with horrible music. And you'll be able to ask some really great questions and get connected to the services in your own community as well.
The other thing that I think is really important is we should look for all of the supports that we can, but with a recognition that we're not going to solve these issues. These are ongoing issues that are going to continue. They're going to perhaps get worse, but we're not. In many cases, these issues are not solvable, but we can manage them. We can manage our own reactions to them, and then we can manage the actual situation. But our own reactions to them is something that's our responsibility to manage, and we should look for support. We should try and because there are specific things that can be helpful, but also our own reaction is okay. I don't have. This is not an emergency situation. My husband or my wife or my grandma is asking me these questions over and over again. What am I going to do? What am I? Am I going to get upset or am I going to just step back and say, okay, that's the way she is right now. That's the way he is, and I can manage this. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And what can I do? Well, I can call the support line and they'll have a friendly voice to talk to. They won't solve the problem likely, but they'll be supportive. Maybe I can, talk to my cousin, or maybe I can do this, or maybe I can do that. Not necessarily that it's going to solve everything. And some things will be solved, but many things in this situation are not going to be solved. In caregiving, we don't have solutions that are tricks that that will work all the time, because everybody's different and every situation is different.
Absolutely. I think that's a really great note to end off on, Patrick. I want to thank you so much for your time and joining us again on another fabulous webinar. Your wisdom and information have been really supportive, and we've seen that through the chat box. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity.